Hi guys, just a quick lesson on factorising and solving polynomials. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the factor theorem. So when you're factorising polynomials, you need to use the factor theorem. The theorem states that you can test to see whether a polynomial has an x minus k as a factor by evaluating the polynomial at x is equal to k. So by plugging in k as your value for x, that will tell you if it is a factor because the result should equal to 0. Okay. So if we look at, we're going to do a couple of examples, but this is exactly the theorem. So a polynomial f of x has a factor x minus k if and only if f of x is equal to 0. Okay. So again, the factor theorem, if f of x has a factor x minus k, then f of k is equal to 0. So the factor is x minus k, but the solution is just k. Whereas if you have a polynomial f of x has a factor x plus k, then the solution will be x minus k. And by solution, we mean that the remainder is 0. Okay? We can use the factor theorem to find the factors of polynomials. For this example here, 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. Your starting point is to look at the factors of the constant. So our constant in this one here is 4, and our factors of 4 are 1 and 4, so it can be plus or minus 1. So it can be plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 4. And then it could be plus or minus 2. And obviously 4 is a perfect square, so you only have 3 factors. So for the solution, we're going to look at plugging in our different factors for the constant. So plus and minus 1, we'll start off using them. So here I'm putting in 1. So I put in 1 as my x, but I end up with a remainder of minus 1, which means that 1 as a solution is not an answer. So my x minus 1 is not my factor. If I plug in x is equal to minus 1 as my solution, I end up with negative 45, which means the remainder isn't 0, so it can't be a solution. So my x plus 1 is not a factor. Okay. When I try f2, or x is equal to 2, I end up with my remainder being 0, which means that if x is equal to 2 as a solution, then my factor x minus 2, then my factor is x minus 2. Okay. Now we can divide the polynomial by x minus 2 because we know that that's a factor, and we're going to end up with a quadratic. The reason we're going to end up with a quadratic is because it was a cubic to begin with. So this x here multiplied by the quadratic will end up giving you the x cubed term. Okay, so we want to write our factors x minus a, x minus b, x minus c, and the product of those factors to get you the polynomial. So this is our first example. We've already worked out that 2 was a solution. So because we've worked out that 2 was a solution, x minus 2 was our factor. Okay, so we're now going to look at dividing our polynomial by the factor x minus 2 to get the quadratic. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to divide x into 6x cubed. Okay, so when I divide x into 6x cubed, so that's this part here, I end up 6x, so the way we're thinking about it is as a fraction, so 6x cubed divided by x is equal to 6x squared. So that 6x squared now goes on top. That's my answer. My second step is to multiply. Again, you remember in your 4 steps, divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So my second step is to multiply. If I multiply x minus 2 by the 6x squared, which is the answer that I've just got here, I end up with 6x cubed, so 6x times my x is 6x cubed, and my 6x times my negative 2 is going to give me my negative 12x squared. Okay, so that's what I end up with. My second step then is to subtract. So if I subtract, I'm going to subtract this one, which will cancel them, and this will become a plus. And I end up with, they cancel, and I end up with minus 7x squared here. Okay, my fourth step is to bring down my 16x, so I bring this 16x down and put it beside my 7x squared. Okay, my fifth step again, I'm starting all over again and I'm dividing. So I divide x into the minus 7x squared, so that's this part here. So my x term now is going into my minus 7x squared. And when I do that, again, I want to write it as a fraction so I can see it visually. It's 7x squared divided by x is equal to -7, so I end up with -7x times. Okay, so I put my -7x times up in my quotient area. And then my next step is to multiply. So again, your steps are divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So I'm multiplying my x minus 2 by my -7x. So this is the step here, -7x multiplied by x, and then multiplied by my -2. So -7x multiplied by x gives me -7x squared, so I can reveal that here. And 7x times -2 gives me 14. The negative times the negative gives me positive 14x. Okay, my next step is to subtract. So my -x squared becomes a plus, and my plus 14x becomes a minus. And I end up with the 7x squareds cancelling out, the -7x squareds cancelling out, and I end up with plus 16x take 14x is 2x. Okay, my next step is to bring down my -4. When I bring down my -4, I just attach it to the 2x at the end. Okay, so I had to bring down my plus 16x at this point, and I'm bringing down my -7 here, sorry, -4. Okay, the next step is back to my first step, which is to divide x into, and I've now got a 2x. So I'm dividing x into my 2x at this point here. X goes into 2x. Again, you're thinking of it as a fraction if it's easier to visualize, cancelling things out. You think of 2x divided by x and you end up with 2. So x goes into 2x 2 times. And I can reveal that up the top. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply it by my x, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply it by my -2. X times 2 is 2x, 2 times -2 is -4, and my last step, so that was me multiplying, my last step then is to subtract. And when I subtract these ones, I end up with 0 as my remainder, because they cancel each other out. Okay, so like I said, when I divided the factor x minus 2 into the polynomial, the x cubed polynomial, I end up with a quadratic as my quotient. Okay. So we're not finished now because we were asked to factorize the cubic, so we have to fully factorize it by factorizing the quadratic also. So now we can factorize 6x squared minus 7x plus 2, so this is just your normal steps for factorizing the quadratic. Because there's a coefficient in front of my x squared, I'm going to multiply my 6 by my 2 and I end up with 12. I'm going to list my factors of 12, which are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Of those factors, I'm going to use the 3 and the 4 because they're the ones that are going to give me my 7 term in the middle. Okay, so now I'm going to break up my quadratic and split my middle term so that I end up grouping in pairs. So from there I have my 6x squared. Of the 3 and the 4, I'm going to pair the 3 because I know that I'm going to have my 2 at the end. So I'm going to pair my 3 with my 6x. So I'll have, and also you need to remember, because this is a minus, sorry, shouldn't have done that. Because this is a minus 7, because it's a minus 7, then we want our 3 and our 4 both to be minuses, okay? So I'm going to have minus 3x here and minus 4x. So the two of them together give you your minus 7. Okay, so we've just split our middle term into these two here. Okay, and from that then I can factorize in pairs. So I'm going to take 3x out of the first two. So 3x comes out of 6x squared and I end up with 2x. 3x comes out of negative 3x and I end up with negative 1. Of negative 4x plus 2 I'm going to take out a negative 2 and I'm left with 2x minus 1. Okay, so straight away I can see that they have a common factor. Their common factor is 2x minus 1. So I can now take out my 2x minus 1. And if I take 2x minus 1 into the first one, I end up with 3x. And if I take 2x out of the second term, I end up with minus 2. So there is my quadratic factorized. Okay, so I now have three factors for my original polynomial, my cubic polynomial, and they were x minus 2 is what we divided in to work out our quadratic, and then our quadratic factorized into 2x minus 1 and 3x minus 2. So I have written it as x minus a, x minus b, and x minus c. Okay. So when you're solving polynomials, if polynomial is written as an equation, so as in it's equal to something, we can write it equal to 0 and solve using the factor theorem and then the null factor law. So remember, if you're using the factor theorem, you're going to write the factors as a product of each other. And if you have the product equal to 0, so therefore if two things multiply together to give you 0, one of them has to be 0. Okay. Dividing polynomials, just how to write your answer. When you divide two polynomials, you can check that the answer. You can check the answer using the following method. So the dividend is equal to the quotient times the divisor plus the remainder, or you could say if you dividend divided by the divisor is equal to the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. So it's just like normal fractions. And here's just a quick terminology for you. So if you're dividing x cubed minus x squared minus 4x minus 6 by x minus 3 is the divisor, the cubic polynomial is the dividend, and the quotient is going to be your quadratic that you end up with. Okay, so here's another example. We've got, this is a little bit trickier, this example, so that's why we're doing it. So we've got 4x plus 2x cubed minus 1. So the degree of this polynomial is 3 because the highest power is 3 because it's x cubed. Okay, so we need to rearrange that, the dividend, when we're putting that down. Okay, so if I was to rearrange it, I put my 2x cubed at front. I don't have an x squared term, but I need to still put it in, so I'm going to put it as a coefficient of 0, and I have a plus 4x minus 1, so that's my dividend. I'm trying to divide it by 2x minus 2. That's my divisor, and then I'm going to work that out. Okay, so if I do that, I'm following the same steps. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So we're going to follow those steps again. So the first step is to divide 2x into 2x cubed. So 2x goes into 2x cubed x squared times. So I'm going to put that up the top. And then I have to multiply. So I'm going to multiply my x squared by my 2x minus 2, and I end up with 2x cubed minus 2x. So that's where that goes there. Okay, the next step is to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 2x cubed minus 2x cubed minus 2x squared, and I end up with just my 2x squared, because when I end up minusing these, this becomes minus and these cancel, and this becomes a plus, so I end up with positive 2x squared. Next step is to bring down my 4x, so when I bring down my 4x, I'm going to have something that looks like 2x squared plus 4x. Next step is to divide, so 2x squared divided by 2x is equal to x, so my x is going to the top at my quotient. And my next step is to multiply, so my x times my 2x minus 2 is equal to 2x squared minus 2x, and I'm going to put that underneath so I can subtract it easily. So now I'm going to subtract that, and I end up with 6x, so my 2x squared minus my 2x squared is going to cancel, and my plus 4x minus negative 2x, which becomes plus, so it becomes 6x. Okay, bring down my minus 1, and then the next step is to divide. So 2x goes into 6x 3 times, and then I can reveal that. So then my next step is to multiply. Again, I'm multiplying my 3 by my 2x and my negative 2. So 3 times 2x is equal to 6x, and 3 times negative 2 is equal to minus 6. I'm putting that underneath to subtract. And when I subtract, my 6x's cancel, and it becomes minus 1 plus 6, which ends up being positive 5. Okay, so I end up with a remainder of positive 5 this time. So I can write my answer as x squared plus x plus 3 plus 5 over 2x minus 2. So when I divide 2x minus 2 into the polynomial 2x cubed plus 0x squared plus 4x minus 1, I end up with that answer. And then I can check it by multiplying it out. So again, the product of these terms should end up giving you the answer. Okay, so when I do x squared plus x plus 3 times the factor that I divided into, 2x minus 2, and add 5 because that was my remainder, I end up with 4x plus 2 x cubed minus 1, which is what we had to begin with. Okay, so that should be all you need to know about polynomials, solving them and factorising them.